So I'm going to try and address a topic that I've seen many people struggle with over the years I've been on the spiritual path. And it's like some people find the spiritual path, they find the spiritual teaching, they become very excited, enthusiastic about it, they engage in it. But then it's like all hell breaks loose around them in their personal lives. And they have so many problems, challenges in their personal lives that it eats up all their attention. And some people give up on the spiritual path after a while. Other people struggle with it and eventually break through. And so that's what I'm going to try to address here, the difference between those who give up and those who eventually make it through the difficulties. So what I'm basically saying is that for many people, not all, but for many people, there's like an interim phase on the spiritual path. And it's actually very important to understand what this phase is about, because it'll make it easier for you to get through it. So many people first, when they find the spiritual path, they go through what I call the honeymoon period, where everything seems wonderful. They're very enthusiastic and optimistic about having found the spiritual teaching or the spiritual practice. And they engage in it wholeheartedly. And then after some time, it's like reality comes knocking on the door. Whatever issues they have in their personal lives, they suddenly come up to the surface. Often they become all-consuming, they eat up all of their attention. And as I said, some people, they become so overwhelmed by this that they just give up on the path, or they give up on a specific teaching. And I want to address that first, and then I'll address those who don't give up and make it through and what the difference is. So what I've seen in some people is that when they find the spiritual path, they have a certain aspect of what I call magical thinking. And it also ties to the outer path or the automatic path that I've talked about in other breakthrough videos. And the idea is that if I do this, whatever it is, whatever is prescribed by the spiritual movement, give decrees and invocations, meditate, do treasure maps, visualize, whatever it is. If I do this, the results should manifest. And this often relates to you have a problem with specific people. And you feel that if you do what your spiritual teaching prescribes, those problems should go away. But you see, you may be changing, but that doesn't mean the other people are changing. And a spiritual practice can't override other people's free will. It, for that matter, can't override your free will, as I'll talk about. But there is a certain group of people that I've seen over the years that have this a little bit superficial view. It's kind of a little bit like the traditional religious view that you find in some cultures even today, that you sacrifice something to a deity, and then the deity is supposed to give you what you want. So if you don't like your neighbor, you sacrifice some food to Shiva, and Shiva is supposed to consume your neighbor with fire, to put it bluntly. And that's, of course, a view that can easily take you off the spiritual path, because you are, in your mind, you are engaging in the spiritual path to get specific outer results, and if you don't get them, you give up. There's something wrong with the path, there's something wrong with the guru, there's something wrong with the teaching or the practice. But you see, what you are doing here is, you are projecting out. You are projecting that someone out there should do something for you. Automatically manifest some magical result. And this is why people give up on the path, because they don't make it over the big hurdle that I talked about in one of my other breakthrough videos, where I talk about the inner path versus the outer path. And it is to realize that the essence of the spiritual path is to resolve your psychology. And so if they are not willing to make that shift from the inner to the outer path, they often give up and they just leave. Maybe they leave a specific teaching and seek for another one, or maybe they leave the path altogether. But I've also seen many people who make the shift, and or maybe they already made it before they found the spiritual path, and realize they are willing to look at themselves. But they still go through this challenging period that I talked about, where it's like whatever problems you have in your personal life, in your personal situation, all of a sudden they're magnified. And it's like the perfect storm. It's like everything is directed against you, and you feel like you're just overwhelmed by all these things that are happening. And it's very, very understandable that people struggle with this. I, in fact, went through that period myself, but it's so long ago that I can barely remember it. It was back in the early 1980s, and so this is one of the things that happens on the spiritual path. You know, you have a breakthrough and rise to another level, and all of a sudden you can't remember how it was before you shifted. But I can vaguely remember that I also had some difficult years, and I've seen many people go through the same. So what is it that can help you get through that crisis period, we might say? What can help you make it through to the other side? Because many people that I've observed over the years make it through the other side. And it's like their personal chaos suddenly dissolves and suddenly goes away. And now they can focus on their spiritual growth. But it takes a certain time and it takes a certain struggle to make it through that. It's like you have to walk through the storm to get to the calm. And so what can help you walk through that? Let's say you are relatively new to the spiritual path, and you have problems with your family members, for example. It's very, very common that people encounter that. It can be parents, siblings, it can be spouses, it can be children, but it can also be people at work that you encounter in business or work. And so all of a sudden it's like something stirs up whatever was there before. It may be that you were in a crisis when you found the spiritual path. It may be that you were there was a certain calm when you found the path, and then the crisis breaks through. But in any event, let's just say this. You have found a spiritual path, you have started applying it, but you're facing this crisis in your personal life. What can help you? What can help you deal with this? And I have already given a lot of tools and teachings about this, but I'm going to try to clarify here what could help you. Because there's a certain shift you can make that could really help you. And I have teachings where I talk about, we have in our subconscious mind what I call the subconscious or separate selves. And I have explained before that there's like a computer program in the subconscious mind. But it's a little more than a program, because it has a certain level of consciousness, and it's able to affect you by pulling on your emotions, by pulling on your thoughts, making you think a certain way, identify yourself a certain way, and also feel a certain way. And I've also talked about the ego, of course, which many spiritual people are familiar with. So what I would say here is that what happens to many people is you find the spiritual path. And your ego, these subconscious selves that make up the larger structure of the ego, they would rather you hadn't found the spiritual path. They would much have preferred that. And maybe you can even look back at your life and see that they have actually been trying to prevent you from either discovering the path or deciding to engage in it. So they were actually trying to prevent you from getting to the point where you acknowledge the path. But now that you have acknowledged it, they're not going to lay down and die. They're going to make an all-out effort to use whatever influence they have over you to derail your path, to get you to this point where you give up, or where you get stuck in a certain rut where you think, oh, I just have to meditate for 20 minutes morning and evening for the rest of my life, and then I'll be in cosmic consciousness. Or I have to declare Jesus my Lord and Savior, and He'll save me when I die. So this is the automatic path that I've talked about. So what I'm saying is, when you experience a crisis like this, it can really help you to say, okay, this is my ego talking. This is my subconscious selves that are trying to derail my progress on the path. And how are they doing it? Now, I know some people will say, because I've also given teaching on this, that it could be external forces attacking you. And that may also be the case. But the reason that external forces can attack you is that you have these mechanisms, these subconscious selves, that are part of your ego. So that's why it's more constructive to address that. And I'm assuming here that, if you're facing a crisis, you have watched my videos about the value of invoking spiritual protection, because that can also really help you through a crisis. But let's say you are doing that, but you're still facing this crisis. So what I would say here is, consider this, as I said. You have these structures, subconscious selves, ego in your subconscious mind. They know that you are right now at a critical stage on your path where you haven't really locked into the path. You still haven't really locked into what the path is about. You haven't really, it's like there's a hump, you haven't made it over. So you're half in, half out, and that's why you can sometimes have doubts about whether the spiritual path works or whether it's for you. And that is these subconscious selves projecting that into your mind. And so you need to recognize here that they will do everything they can to prevent you from getting over that hump where you're locked on the spiritual path, because you know it works and you know it produces progress. You've experienced that you have personally attained progress from following the spiritual path. And therefore you know that if you keep going, you can make more progress, and therefore your ego can't really derail you anymore. So that's the hump I would like to help you get over. And so what can help you? Okay, what can help you is realizing, what are the tools that my ego, my subconscious selves are using against me? And one of the primary tools is something I have talked about before, but I thought I would go into it a little bit more here. And which is what we can call your personal dramas. So let's say, just to give you a little bit of an example, let's say you have a difficult situation with family members. Parents, children, spouse, siblings. You have a certain situation that's been going on all of your life where you have not just a conflict, but a certain interaction, a certain dynamic between you and your family members. And it's influencing your spiritual path because it's taking up your attention and energy. So what if you took a piece of paper and you could look at it as your family situation is a play in a theater, right? And then you could write down on a piece of paper, either in a list or you could make these little blobs, the names of your family members, the names of all the actors involved in the play, including yourself. And then, let's say you do these little blobs here and there, and you put some arrows between them, between you and your family members. And then you say, okay, so here's my father. What's the dynamic with my father? What's the drama? And mind you, it's not about your father, it's about you. What's the drama in my mind with my father? Or whomever is the primary irritant in your family, the one who pushes your buttons more than anybody else. What's my interaction like? And then when you see a certain interaction, let's say you have a parent who's always blaming you. This is just an example, it can be many other things. But let's say you have a parent who's always blaming you. You're not good enough, you're not doing the right thing, you're not living your life the way you should be living. You shouldn't be into this spiritual stuff. They're just out to get your money. And you can see in your mind that you always react to this by feeling attacked, by feeling accused. And you always feel you have to defend yourself. So your parent is attacking you, accusing you of not being good enough, and you go into a reaction. You have to defend yourself. But now ask yourself this. Why is it so important to me that my parent sees that I'm good enough, at doing things, that I can do things right? Why is that important to me? Or you could go even further and say, why does it matter? I mean, look at it. You are an adult now, right? How to say it? It's like, you're an adult. Physically, you're probably independent of your parent. So, physically, you could walk away. You could just say, I don't want to deal with this person anymore. I'm walking away. In fact, let's look at it a little different. Let's say that this wasn't your parent. This was a person you met, that you never met before, you had no history with. It was a stranger who started attacking you like your parent is doing. What would you do? Well, you might still want to defend yourself. But you could also just say, why do I care what this person thinks about me? I'm just walking away. Right? So what I'm saying is, there's an element in the relationship with your family members that makes you feel you can't just walk away. And this right there is the essence of a drama. Because the drama makes us feel we're stuck in a certain situation. Right? It makes us feel we are stuck. It doesn't make us stuck. But in our minds, we feel, I can't just walk away. So now you might be saying here, what are you saying? I could just walk away from my parents? I can't just walk away from my parents. Okay, that's good. So now trace that. Why do you feel that you can't walk away from your parents? What is it in your mind? Because if you trace this, there are some feelings. Yes, there may be some feelings of loyalty, a sense of obligation, fear of your parents would condemn you, your community would condemn you, your other family members would condemn you. So maybe some fears there about what would happen if you walked away. But if you trace this a little bit deeper beyond the raw feelings, there's a belief somewhere. I can't walk away because. What is that for you personally? I mean, you could really, if you want to, you could take your notepad, you could sit there, you could listen to this section of the video again, and you could come to this point where I say, I can't walk away from my parents because, and then you just write down the first thing that comes to you. Don't judge it, don't analyze it, just write down. What is the belief that makes you feel you can't walk away? That belief defines the drama you have with your parent. Because it makes you feel stuck. In other words, your parent is accusing you, or whatever it may be in a dynamic, but let's say for the example here, your parent is accusing you. You don't like it. You in fact don't even like having to defend yourself constantly. But since you feel you can't walk away, you feel like you can't avoid this because your parent is not going to change his or her behavior. He's been doing this to you your whole life. So you can't get away from it. And that's why you go into this dynamic of having to defend yourself, having to reject what your parent is saying, having to try and prove them wrong, or whatever the dynamic may be. I can look back when I was in my early 20s, I had a situation with my father where he was accusing me, and I was trying to defend myself by proving to him that he wasn't always perfect either. And that means he was accusing me, I felt attacked, I tried to defend myself by accusing him back, so now he felt accused by me, and the spiral just kept going. And I realized at some point that we were going to end up not having any kind of relationship if this continued. But anyway, that's not really the point I want to get at. The point I want to get at is whatever dynamic you have that you are outplaying with your significant other is because you feel stuck. So you need to look beyond that outer behavior where you are trying to defend yourself, for example. You need to go back and say, why do I feel stuck? And it's because you have a belief you can't just walk away. So it's like you can say your family situation is just a play that's unfolding on the stage, right? And you're up there on the stage. And there's 500 people sitting there in the audience watching you. In fact, you might feel like the whole world is watching you, which we often do when you're in these difficult situations. So the whole world is watching you on the stage there. And you have a certain makeup on, you have a certain costume on, and there's a certain role you have to play, you feel. And you're standing there, and all of a sudden it's like you're looking at the other people on the stage, you're looking at the people in the audience, and you have this thought in your mind, what if I just walked out of here? What if I just walked off the stage, left the theater, never looked back? What I'm saying is, there's a mechanism in you, it's a subconscious self, that will scream at you, and maybe you can hear it right now screaming at you, you can't just walk away. You have to. And this is where you can also pay attention. You have to what? You have to do something first. Or maybe not even first, but you have to do something. You have to keep playing the part. But what exactly is the part? And so maybe you can hear already in words what that projection is, what that part is. Maybe you haven't quite uncovered it. So let's go a little bit further. Why do you feel you can't walk away? Why do you feel stuck in a situation? Well, it's because, you could say at a certain surface level, you could say, as I said, you have all your family members, all the people you know in your society, perhaps the whole world that are saying, you can't walk away from your parents. You are obligated. You should be a good son or daughter. But is that really it? Is that really what's keeping you there? No, it actually isn't. It may feel that way at a certain level because you have these subconscious selves that were created as you were brought up and probably also created in past lifetimes that says you are obligated towards your family. Almost all cultures on earth have this. You're obligated towards your family. So this is at a certain surface level. But if you look a little bit deeper, that's not really what's keeping you from walking away. What's keeping you from walking away is that in your mind you have a subconscious self, in your subconscious mind, has a subconscious self that has a certain image of you, how you are supposed to be. Think about this. I mean, after you're done watching the video, spend a little time pondering this. In your particular situation, the particular reactions you have with, for example, parents, what is the image of yourself that you have? How you're supposed to be, how you're supposed to behave. And then consider what would happen to that image if you actually walked away. Yeah, it would be threatened, it would be shattered, yeah. But how? What exactly would you feel? Mind you here, what I'm taking you through is, it's not about the other people. It doesn't matter what they say, what they think, or how they act. It's you. Only thing that matters here is what is happening in your mind. So, what is the image you have of yourself? Now, this may be tied to how you think other people see you, but that's not really the point here. The point is, if you go beyond how other people look at you, you have a way of looking at yourself relating to this situation. How do you look at yourself? What exactly is your image? Are you, for example, I'm a good son. I'm a kind person. I don't hurt other people. It can be a lot of things. I'm just throwing out some examples. So you have an image, and you feel that if you just walked away from your parent, that image would be shattered. Right? So now you've identified, you have an image of yourself, and really all you are doing, all the outer situation of how you're interacting with your parent, whether you're defending yourself, whether you're accusing them back, whether you're trying to prove yourself, all of this has only one purpose: to defend the image you have of yourself. That's the only purpose for the whole dynamic, the whole interaction you have with these outer people. It's not about them, not about the outer situation. It's all about this one thing, that you have a subconscious self that has this image of yourself, and you're trying to defend it. You probably have other subconscious selves that are projecting out to why it's so important to defend it and are helping you defend it, but it's all about maintaining this image of yourself. So when you recognize that, you can say, okay, what is this image doing for me? You can do what in the business world is called a cost-benefit analysis. And you could do a piece of paper even. You can say, here's the self. What are the advantages I get out of having that self? And you could say, for example, I feel I'm a good person. I feel I'm a good son. I feel I'm a kind person. But then you can list, what does it cost me to have this self-image? And you will see that this self-image is literally like a straitjacket. You can't move. You are tied up. Because in order to uphold the image, you have to behave a certain way. You can't acknowledge what you really want to do in life, what you really feel. You can't acknowledge any of this. You're in a state of constant self-denial. Because you have to uphold the image. And so when you start looking at this, you can say, okay, so here's the benefits, here's the cost. Do the benefits outweigh the cost, or is it the other way around? You probably have never thought about this before. And I'm not saying you couldn't theoretically say, no, but it's so important for me to uphold this image, that's it, I'm just going to do it. And I have no problem with that. But so then you can ignore what I've said here, you can forget about this video, and your dynamic will stay the same, possibly for the rest of your life. I don't have a problem with that. I'm not trying to tell you what to do or not to do. But what I'm saying is that I think most people, if you do this, go through this process, you will find that the cost of upholding this image is way too big compared to the advantage you're getting out of it. And then you can start contemplating, do I want to uphold this image? Would I in fact feel more free if I just throw off the wig and walk out of the theater? Would I feel more free? And is that freedom more important to me than upholding this image of myself as a good son? And so here, when you're hearing this, if you're paying a little bit of attention, you might very well have some voices from your inside your own mind, or it may sound like they're coming from the outside, they're screaming at you, why you can't do this? Why you're not allowed to do this? Why it would be disastrous to do this? Why you're selfish? You only care about yourself. All of your spiritual paths is just about you. It's all about yourself. And, you know, it depends a little bit on where you're at on the spiritual path, what you can do about this. But I think And there's probably more than one way to deal with it, but I think that certainly one way to deal with it is to say that well, it depends. It really depends on whether you have experienced what I have been talking about in a lot of my videos, where I say that the core of your being is what I call the conscious you, which can step outside of your normal personality and look at it from the outside and experience that I'm pure awareness, I'm neutral awareness. In other words, you're experiencing I'm not defined by anything on earth. Because if you have experienced that, then you can say, but I have a right to make the choice. Another way to neutralize this is that the projection against you will probably be you're selfish, you can't leave your parents behind. Or your children, or your siblings, or your spouse, whatever it may be. You can't leave people behind. But is that what I'm talking about here? Have I at any point in this video said you should leave your parents? No. I said you should leave behind the self-image that is causing your interaction with your parents to be trapped in this pattern. Those are two very different things. Now, I know it won't seem that way because to the subconscious selves you have, it will seem like it's the same thing. He's telling you, leave your parents. And it's like, just like these gurus are saying, leave your parents and come to my ashram and submit yourself to me. But that's not what I'm saying. First of all, I don't have an ashram. I'm not asking you to submit to me at all. I'm just saying, acknowledge there's a difference between leaving behind the self-image that's locking your interaction with your parents in a certain pattern and then leaving your parents. And I'm not telling you to leave your parents. Because see, here's the deal. If you can leave behind the image of yourself that is locking you, then your interaction with your parents will change. Now, I had talked about I had a situation in my early 20s with my father, right? And I came to a point where I acknowledged, if we keep going this way, in a couple of years we won't be able to talk to each other. So I said, do I want to have a relationship with my father for the rest of my life, or don't I? And I said, I do. I'd rather have a relationship with him. And then I had to acknowledge it was something very simple. He wasn't likely to change, at least the dynamic between us. He couldn't change it. He was more stuck in a pattern than I was. So if the situation was to change, I had to change. And that means I had to make a decision. And in a sense, you could say, I didn't have the terminology back then, but I decided to let a certain self die, namely the self that always felt I had to defend myself. And I deliberately, consciously decided I'm not going to defend myself anymore, and I'm not going to accuse my father back. So whatever he said to me, I said something positive. And this is what I'm saying. If you overcome the self-image you have right now, of a parent or spouse or whatever it may be, you will not have to engage in the dynamic you have been engaging in so far. So let's say you have been defending yourself or accusing the other person back. You won't have to do this anymore. And that means your dynamic, your interaction is going to change right away. It can't be another way. Because you're going to start treating the other person differently. Because you don't have to defend yourself. And what I did with my father was basically, I decided to accept him how he was instead of trying to change him. See, back then, what I was essentially doing was, it was unpleasant to me that my father had a negative view of me. So I wanted to change my feeling. But I thought the only way to do that is to change my father's view of me. You see, this is what is the dynamic in most relationships. Because you have the self-image of yourself that you're trying to uphold, right? Your dynamic with your parent, it's all about you upholding the image. So here's your parent accusing you of not being good enough, and it threatens your image of yourself. And therefore you think, well, the only way to change that is to change how my parent looks at me. No, 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 no. The essence of the spiritual path is you do not try to change that which involves the free will choices of other people. You only try to change what involves your free will choices, meaning your mind, your psychology. And when you decide that your self-image is not threatened by your parent, whatever your parent is saying, you can stop trying to accuse your parent back or defend yourself. You can just accept your parent for who he or she is. And if your parent feels that you are accepting him or her, most likely they are going to change. Perhaps they're not because they're so stuck in a pattern. But then, what does it matter to you? If you let go of the self-image that's causing you to have to defend yourself when you're accused, what does it matter that you're still accused? It doesn't matter. You can literally do what Jesus said. Turn the other cheek. Love your enemies. Be good to those who hurt you. You see, so that's what I'm trying to say. It's not a matter of leaving the outer people. It's about leaving the self-image that causes you to be locked in a certain interaction, a certain pattern, a certain dynamic with the other people. And that is not selfish. And it is not going to hurt them. It's only going to potentially benefit them. I have experienced in people, in situations, that when I changed my view and my behavior towards other people, it was like they almost felt relieved. Like with my father, as I said, he was accusing me, there was a certain pattern. When I stopped trying to defend myself, stopped accusing him back, but always said something positive, it took, 6 to 8 months, but then he started changing. And it was almost like he was relieved that we could again have a relationship where we could talk without the tension. We could just talk like we had done before. And he could tell his stories about his childhood and his duck hunting and this and that. So it was like he got his son back, he felt, I think. And it's the same thing with you. In many cases it'll be that way. Now, in some cases it won't. People won't change. They're too stuck in their pattern. But then, as I said, what does it matter to you? Because if you don't have the self-image. So that's why I'm trying to say, letting go of this self-image that locks you in a pattern with other people is not selfish. It is not hurting them. It is not a threat to them. It is not a threat to the world's opinion of you. And anyway, even if it was a threat to the world's opinion, if you don't have the self, you don't care about the world's opinion. You are free to be who you are. You're free to say, who am I? What do I want to do with my life? And how do I want to interact with other people? That's really what it's about. It's about, as I said, your situation, your outer situation with other people is a play. You're standing up there on the stage. The other people are standing there on the stage. Maybe they're pointing the finger at you. Maybe they're all pointing the finger at you. Maybe the audience is pointing the finger at you. But instead of walking out of the theater, you're simply taking off the costume and the makeup, and you're saying, I'm no longer playing this role, but I'm still here, so deal with it. You see, I use the example, you can walk away, because there's a point where in order to see this self and give it up, you have to realize, you have to come to this point where you see this self, the self-image you're trying to uphold, right? And you get in touch with how you feel that this would be totally devastating if this image was shattered, or if it was shattered in the eyes of other people. And that's why there's all this pressure, you can't just walk away. And that's why you have to consider, what would actually happen if I just walked away? Would I physically die if I walked away from this image? Or if I walked away from my parents? Would I physically die? And you can realize, no. Then why would you psychologically die if you walked away? Perhaps you would actually be reborn psychologically and feel free if you walked away. But what I'm saying is, so this is the stage. You have to see the self and realize, I don't absolutely need this self. I could live without it. I literally could live without it. And when you realize that, you can say, well, I don't actually have to walk away from the outer situation. I just have to let that self die, so I can react differently to these other people. So I can interact with them in a more positive way instead of what we've been doing so far. But it requires you to come to that point, and that's why I'm saying it is really very, very helpful if you have realized this, that you are the conscious you. If not, try and watch some of my videos about this. I talk about the conscious you. I talk about, for example, in my whole playlist about the birth trauma. I encourage you to watch that also, and really try to get in touch with this and see that you have probably already in your life had situations where you saw something, you decided to just walk away from it because you realized it didn't define you. I think you've already done it, or you wouldn't be on the spiritual path in the first place. It's just a matter of becoming conscious of this and then realizing, yes, I have already walked away from something, some separate selves, but I just haven't walked away from the one that relates to my family because it's a stronger self than the others. So I think if you will work on this, even the tools I've given you here, they're pretty simple, but just contemplate your situation, perhaps give some decrees and invocations to the Ascended Masters and ask the Masters to help you see this. If you have a specific Master, ask that Master. If not, ask Mother Mary, who's always willing to help you work on your psychology. And then just sit there and write down, as I said, what's the dynamic? You can say, what are the feelings I have towards this person? What are the thoughts behind it? What are the deeper beliefs? And especially, what is the belief about myself, my self-image? What is the self-image I'm trying to uphold in my interactions with that person? And then the cost-benefit analysis, what are the benefits of this self-image? And what does it cost me? And am I perhaps at the point where the cost outweighs the benefits and I'm ready to give it up? And then you can really, it's not so hard to do this. I've had people, for example, who said to me, yes, Kim, but I understand what you're saying about these subconscious self, and I have this self, and I see that I have the self, I just can't let it go. And my answer to that is always, yes, you are seeing the self intellectually. You're seeing that there's a structure there, and that it has certain effects, but you're not seeing behind the self to the belief behind the self. Because once you go deeper, you will come to the point where you are seeing, oh, that's the belief. And when you see that it's an illusion and see how it limits you, you don't have to actually decide to let go of the self. It just happens. It's like the old story, a man is in the dark, he finds something, he thinks it's a rope, then the light's turned on, he sees it's a snake. You don't have to stand there and analyze, oh geez, should I let go of this cobra before it bites me or not? You just throw it away instinctively. And it's the same thing that happens here. When you really see the illusion that the self is based on, you spontaneously let it go. So that's what I'm saying. If you say, I see the self, I can't let it go, it's because you haven't actually seen the belief behind the self. And there are tools for that. There's the book Healing Your Spiritual Traumas, or Mother Mary has an exercise. But even the tools I've given you in this video, you can keep digging deeper, keep looking deeper. And perhaps I started out saying there are people who are in this interim phase where they're really not locked on the spiritual path, and their egos are throwing everything at me. They're throwing the kitchen sink at you to derail you. And perhaps if you find yourself in that situation, perhaps you haven't really locked into what I'm saying. That the spiritual path is about one thing: resolving your psychology. And I have seen over the many years I've been on the path, so many people who didn't log into that. So many people that want to believe that, oh, if I just keep giving an hour of violet flame decrees a day, or meditating 20 minutes morning and evening, I'll make it in the end. I don't have to look at my psychology. It will just happen because this spiritual guru is so enlightened, and these spiritual tools that he's giving is so powerful and effective. But it's just not the case. I mean, it's just not the case. And here's why. Your experience of life takes place inside your mind. I've talked about this in other videos, so it can help you realize maybe. It's a basic teaching. I actually first wrote about this many, many years ago. It's that you have this. Your life, you have on the one side of the equation, you have your life experience. On the other side, there is outer circumstances. So outer circumstances equals your life experience. That's how most people live on earth. That's what they think. If I have a bad outer situation, I can only be unhappy. The only way to be happy is to have the right outer situation. That's how they sell you something, whether they're politicians or business people, or spiritual gurus for that matter. So the only way to really break that deadlock is to realize, no, outer situations plus inner conditions in your subconscious mind equals your life experience. In other words, you are putting a buffer zone between the outer situation and your inner experience. So, in other words, you are right now, you are in a certain situation with your family members, right? Who's the you that's in this situation? Who is the you? What is the you? It's, as I've said, not your physical body, it's not your emotions, it's not your thoughts, it's not even your sense of identity. It's this conscious you that's neutral awareness. So the very core of your being, if you want to think about it that way, somewhere inside your head is what you mean when you say I am. And it's experiencing the outer situation, but the outer situation is out there. Between that you and the outer situation is your subconscious mind. All of these separate selves. So, here is your parent accusing you. And immediately when you feel that, bing, a subconscious self comes up from the subconscious mind, up from the deep, puts these glasses on you, and now you are, the way you're experiencing that situation is completely colored by the subconscious self. You are not experiencing the situation because your experience is defined here in the glasses. And what I'm talking about here and what the spiritual path is all about is taking off these glasses. Then you can experience the situation neutrally. As I said, you don't have to, you can say, I don't have to react to being accused. I don't have to defend myself. What does it matter that I am accused? You can actually come to a point, as I've also talked about in another breakthrough video, where you depersonalize your life because you realize that your parent is accusing you. Bing, you put on the glasses. When you have these glasses on, you're taking this personally. I mean, you're not thinking, why is my parent accusing me? You're not thinking that way. You're just thinking about how to defend yourself. When you take off your glasses, you can see, why is your parent accusing you? Because he's wearing another set of glasses. that's causing him to accuse everybody, or at least you, but most likely everybody, because he has his own subconscious selves that has a self-image of himself. And it may be that he has a self-image that he's not good enough, and therefore he's trying to put other people down because then he feels a little better. But these are, whatever his personal glasses are, when you're not wearing your glasses anymore, you can see, oh, he's not really accusing me. Because what he's saying isn't really directed at me, it's not really applied to me. It's all about internal in him. So, you see what I'm saying? When you're wearing your glasses, everything is about you, right? And therefore you think that people are personally attacking you. When you take off these glasses, you can see, no, they're attacking you because they're wearing their own glasses. It's all about them. It's all internal in their minds. Just like before, it was all internal in your mind. And that's why when you have these situations where you're wearing your glasses and your parent is wearing his glasses, the dynamic is locked. Nothing is going to change it. But when you take off your glasses, the dynamic will change. If nothing else, your experience of the situation will change because you're no longer wearing those glasses. You don't feel attacked. You don't have to defend yourself. But the only reason, or the only way that's going to happen is that you come to see that you have this self-image of yourself, that you are desperately, or rather the subconscious self is desperately trying to uphold it. And that in reality that subconscious image is a straitjacket. And that you will feel so much more free when you let go of that straitjacket. That I can guarantee you because I've experienced it myself so many times. I have taken off so many straitjackets in my 49 years on the spiritual path. And I'm sure there are still some left. But at least I've taken off so many that I know that the process works and I know where it's leading. So all I'm saying here is, if you're still at the point where you haven't taken off your first straitjacket and experienced what it's like, then just be a little patient with yourself. Apply the tools. But also beyond that, I would say, yes, you should apply the tools and the teachings. But you also need to realize the only way out of a catch-22, of a deadlock where you feel trapped, is to look at it in a different way than you have done before. It's not a matter really of, I used to think when I was younger, I came to a point where I realized that everything was about how I looked at things. And I thought there must be some knowledge that can change it. There must be some magical sentence that some spiritual guru can give me that changes everything. But it really isn't just, not really a matter of words, it's more a matter of this subtle shift in consciousness where, and I experienced that, when you start looking for self, when you start looking at your reactions, when you start looking at your self-image, it may take some time, but gradually, it's like you're starting to work on it, starting to soften up this hardened pattern. And all of a sudden, you just shift. Oh, now I see it. I never saw it before. And it's not necessarily there's an outer trigger there. It's just you do the work. You start the process. And one day the shift happens. And it's like once you have become consciously aware of this process, you really can't feel stuck again. Because you know, there's always something I haven't seen yet. And I'm just working on it, looking at it from different angles, maybe studying the topic from psychology books or whatever. And trust that one day I'll see it. But you have to be willing to do that. And sometimes you have to, as what I'm saying is, you're looking at it from different angles because you're willing to look at the situation in a way you haven't looked at before. And that's what I've been trying to do with this whole video is, you're in a situation with your parents, you have during your whole upbringing, perhaps even for lifetimes, come to look at that dynamic in a certain way. And all I've been trying to do here is say, shift a little bit. Step outside of the way you've been looking at it. Look at it from a different angle. and ask yourself the questions you haven't asked before. Ask yourself the questions that your subconscious selves are very uncomfortable with you asking, but ask them anyway. And really, I believe that if you do this, one day it'll just click and you'll say, oh, I don't have to be this way with my parents. I don't have to react this way to them. I don't have to defend myself. And that's when things will have shifted for you. And you will feel so much more free. Now, this may require you some follow-up work. It may be that you have an original breakthrough, but you still have to defend it, or you come back to the topic several times because it's a very deep pattern created over many past lifetimes. But still, if you keep working with the process, there comes a point where you just look at it and say, gosh, why did that used to matter so much to me? It really doesn't matter anymore. And as I said, it doesn't mean you have to leave your family behind. But what you're leaving behind is the role that you saw yourself, that you absolutely had to play with your family. That role you can leave behind. And both you and your family will be better off for it.